Can you figure out the temperature by listening to a cricket chirp?
Yes, the warmer the night, the faster a cricket sings. This phenomenon is so reliable that a mathematical equation can be used to calculate air temperature. Count the number of cricket chirps made in 13 seconds. And add 40, and you will get the temperature outside, in degrees Fahrenheit.
Why, then, are the buttons on women's clothing arranged in an opposite way? For fastening from right to left?
Although no one knows for sure, it is believed that the tradition for arranging women's buttons began long ago, when buttons were considered very fine ornaments, made of silver, gold, and jewels. Women who could afford many fine clothes with beautiful buttons usually had maids who dressed them. It was easier for maids, who were usually right-handed, to help with their mistress's clothing if the buttons that faced them were fastened from left to right. Of course, today, nearly all women dress themselves. And it would make sense if all clothes buttoned with the ease of the right-hander in mind. But the tradition of button arrangement is so old and women are so used to fastening them a certain way that the situation is unlikely to change.
Why do people wear uniforms?
Some jobs require special clothing or uniforms. Sometimes these special clothes are meant to protect workers or the people they work with. An emergency room doctor, for instance, may wear special clothes to protect herself from blood and infectious agents as well as to protect patients from the germs and impurities that may be present on ordinary clothing. Most often, though, special clothes or uniforms are worn so that workers can be easily recognized by other people. Occupations that require uniforms are frequently service jobs, where workers help or perform services for other people. Workers in stores and restaurants frequently wear uniforms so that customers know who to ask for help or service. Uniforms help police officers do their jobs better, because people recognize them and go to them for help or give them the cooperation they need to maintain the law. On the battlefield, soldiers wear uniforms to identify which country they are from, signaling whether they are friends or enemies.
Why do some whales make sounds underwater?
With special instruments, people have been able to record the deep sounds that some whales make as they swim underwater. The mellow sounds are so lovely to listen to that they have been recorded on compact discs and tapes and sold in stores. Some whale sounds resemble barking and can be heard by humans. Whales also make clicking sounds that people can only hear with the help of special equipment. Scientists think that whales use these sounds to help them find their way and keep track of one another. Whales travel in groups, called pods, as they swim in the deep and often dark ocean. This technique is called echolocation. The vocalizations bounce off objects, creating echoes that return to the whale. Whales can see fairly well with their small eyes, but their hearing is extraordinary. Echolocation can tell the whale how big an object is, how far away it is, and in what direction it is traveling.
Why do some fruits and vegetables turn brown after you cut them?
Some fruits and vegetables, like apples and potatoes, have chemicals in them that turn brown when they mix with oxygen in the air. A chemical reaction called oxidation causes the brown. Coating on the cut surfaces of such fruits and vegetables. This coating actually preserves the rest of the fruit or vegetable at least for a while by forming a protective coating that keeps oxygen from getting at the rest. By brushing the cut surface right away with lemon juice, you can keep oxygen from getting to the flesh of a fruit or vegetable and stop it from turning brown altogether.
Why do dogs wag their tails?
We usually think that a dog wags its tail to show happiness. But tail wagging in dogs is a little more complicated than that. A dog communicates a lot of information by the movement and position of its tail. If the dog wags its tail while holding it high and stiff, that animal feels threatened and is preparing for a fight. If the tail wags slowly and is held low, the dog is feeling insecure but friendly. But a tail that is held high and swings gracefully back and forth shows that the dog is confident, relaxed, and happy. Even the position of a non-wagging tail has a lot to say. A dog reprimanded for bad behavior often tucks its tail between its legs, showing its distress or fear.
Can carnivorous plants be harmful to humans?
While some science fiction books and movies have portrayed giant carnivorous plants with an appetite for human flesh, such plants do not exist in the real world. Insect-eating plants are much more likely to be harmed by humans than to cause harm to humans. These plants capture small insects, digesting them using chemicals that are too weak to have any effect on people.
Who made up our system of numbers?
From earliest times, people have had to keep track of things by counting. Historians believe that people used their fingers and toes, and then notched sticks. And finally number systems to help them count and measure things. The system of numbers that we use is known as a base 10, or decimal system because it advances in segments of 10, dec means 10. It is believed that such a system is based on finger counting. Two of the most widely used number systems, Arabic and Roman, are decimal systems. We use the Arabic system of writing numbers. Europeans learned it from Arabs, who in turn developed it from the number system used by Hindus in ancient India. But other types of decimal number systems had developed simultaneously in different parts of the world. As early as 4000 BC, Babylonians, who lived in the region that is now Iraq, wrote numbers from left to right and grouped them in tens. Ancient China, too, used a decimal number system. The numeral 0 was added to the Arabic system later. It was first used in India and China around AD 600.
What is second-hand smoke?
Second-hand smoke is the smoke inhaled by people who are not themselves smoking but who are near others who are smoking. In the early 1990s, the United States Environmental Protection Agency declared that second-hand smoke can cause cancer and other diseases in people who have never actually smoked a cigarette themselves. As the dangers of second-hand smoke became widely known, many laws were passed in the U.S. to protect non-smokers from having to inhale another person's smoke. Some of these laws prevent people from smoking in public or government buildings. Non-smoking sections in restaurants have grown larger and larger, with some restaurants banning smoking altogether. As recently as 10 years ago, many people could smoke while sitting at their desks in a large office. Now such behavior is unheard of, and smokers usually have to go outside to have a cigarette.
What is a bruise?
When a bump or fall breaks blood vessels under your skin's surface, a bruise might appear. The blood that seeps out of the vessels and into your tissues changes color over several days, usually from red to purple and blue, to brown and yellow before it fades away. Bruises are not harmful unless they are very severe. Bruises on your shin and head, where bones are located just beneath the skin, can swell a lot, like with a black eye. A cold, wet cloth or ice can reduce the swelling.
Can any animals talk?
Most animals have the ability to talk to other animals of the same species. They make one kind of noise to attract a mate, another to sound the alarm that a predator approaches, and so on. Animals can also communicate with each other through gestures, touch, and even by releasing certain odors. The more evolved the animal, the more complex their communication becomes. Animals that live in complicated social structures, with a leader and followers, communicate the details about that social order to each other. As for whether animals can talk to humans, this simple question has sparked heated debate among scientists for many years. Experiments teaching chimpanzees sign language so they could communicate with their human observers resulted initially in exciting discoveries. It appeared that the chimps had learned to put together simple sentences from the signs they had learned. A closer look, however, revealed that the animals had simply learned to move their hands in ways that pleased the humans. The scientists, eager to believe communication with the chimps was possible, misinterpreted the animals' gestures. A few years later, in the mid-1990s, scientists in Atlanta, Georgia, worked with bonobo, or pygmy, chimps to teach them to associate words with dozens of different symbols on a keyboard. The scientists believe that these chimps learn to communicate following instructions and offering information at the level of a human toddler. While many experts agree that such basic communication between the smartest primates and human beings is possible, some linguists, or human language specialists, don't think that animals can learn our languages. They feel that studies like the ones done with the bonobo chimps simply show that the animals are very good at being trained. They can figure out which buttons to push to get food and other rewards from the scientists. Many pet owners and scientists have had great success teaching parrots, particularly the African gray parrot, to talk. Parrots have outstanding mimicking abilities. They can imitate a human voice with surprising accuracy, and they can learn a great number of words. What is unclear, however, is whether parrots can really understand the words they say, or if they are merely imitating what they hear.
Why do porcupines have quills?
The porcupine's quills are its best method of defending itself from predators. The sharp quills, which are modified hairs, are all over the porcupine's body, including its tail. When the North American porcupine, the most common species in the Americas, is threatened, it turns its tail toward the approaching animal. If attacked, this porcupine will thrash its predator with its tail, thrusting its quills into the other animal's hide. Often some of the quills will come off the porcupine's tail, and their barbed ends, like a fishhook, will stay embedded in the attacker's skin. The average porcupine has around 30,000 quills. Porcupines are rodents, a group that makes up around half of all mammal species and includes mice, squirrels, and beavers. They are nocturnal, meaning active at night, and they eat tree bark, roots, and other vegetation. their diet doesn't do much to satisfy their intense salt cravings. So porcupines have been known to chew on things like canoe paddles, animal bones, and even the discarded clothing of humans to get to the salt and oils in these items.
How do whales and other mammals stay underwater so long?
All aquatic mammals, meaning those that live in water, have lungs and require air to breathe. Some, like dolphins, live close to the water's surface and come up for air around once or twice a minute. Other sea mammals find their food by diving deep into the ocean. So they must be able to hold their breath for longer periods of time. They can do this because they take in a great deal of air with each breath. Their lungs take up a larger percentage of their body than do human lungs. Their bodies can also hold onto the oxygen they breathe better than human bodies can. Oxygen is required in every part of the body, for every bodily function. But when marine mammals go down for a deep dive, their oxygen is only sent to the most important parts, the heart, brain, and muscles used for swimming. The rest of the body, the stomach, for example, must wait until the dive is finished to get its oxygen. Human beings can hold their breath underwater for an average of 1 minute. A hippopotamus can stay underwater for 15 minutes. The sperm whale and bottlenose whale can stay underwater the longest. Some have been recorded on dives that lasted nearly 2 hours.
Why do women in some countries wear veils?
A veil is a piece of cloth that is usually worn to hide a person's hair or face. Women have worn such veils since ancient times, mostly in Middle Eastern countries, primarily for the purpose of keeping men from looking at them. Many women of the Muslim faith still wear veils of some type when they are out in public. In some Muslim countries, only a woman's eyes are allowed to show. Although Westerners, people from North America and Western Europe, may find these veils symbolic of women's restricted freedoms in many Muslim societies, Muslim women wear them to honor long-held traditions of modesty and to show respect for their religion and the men in their lives.
Will wild birds reject their babies if people touch them?
Many people believe that if a person touches a wild baby bird to put it back in the nest, the bird's parents will be able to detect the human scent and will then reject the baby, pushing it right back out of the nest. This widely held belief is simply not true. If a baby bird is found on the ground and appears to be able to fly, leave it alone and trust that it will find its way back to the family nest. If it clearly cannot fly, and you know where its nest is, pick it up gently and place it back in the nest. If the nest can't be found, some experts suggest putting the baby bird in a small basket and hanging it on a nearby bush or tree. the bird's parents will care for it in the basket until it is able to fly.
Why do soldiers salute one another?
It is believed that the tradition of saluting raising the right hand to the forehead got its start many centuries ago. During the time when knights fought in full suits of armor. When two knights met, they had to raise the visors on their metal helmets to identify themselves and to see if they were friends or enemies. The motion associated with lifting the visor continued when two fighting men met. Even when soldiers no longer wore armor. This behavior turned into the salute. The salute became a sign of recognition and respect. Used especially by military men and women when in the presence of a military superior, someone who ranks above them.
Why do plants grow toward light?
A plant's ability to make food depends on its ability to absorb enough light energy. So, many plants move in the small ways that they can toward the sun or other light sources. A characteristic known as phototroism. Some plants hold their leaves flat and open during the day to catch as many of the sun's rays as possible and close them at night. Other plants change the direction their leaves face throughout the day, following the path of the sun as it moves across the sky. When a plant grows in uneven sunlight with the light hitting just one side of the plant, let's say chemical messengers called hormones will cause more stems and leaves to grow on the lighted side so that the plant can gather enough of the sunlight it needs to make food. Phototroism explains why houseplants turn their leaves toward windows, growing into lopsided shapes unless they are rotated once in a while.
What causes a fever?
The average temperature of the human body, when measured under the tongue, is around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius. You have a fever when your body temperature goes higher than this. Scientists believe that fever is part of the body's defense system against infection. The higher temperature may kill the germs causing it or may speed up the body's defenses, like white blood cell and antibody production, against it. So a fever is a good thing, a sign that your body is working hard to get better. Medicines to reduce fever aren't really necessary unless a person's temperature gets dangerously high above 102 degrees Fahrenheit, 38.8 degrees Celsius. In children and 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius, in adults. At such high temperatures, the human body can no longer cool itself by flushing, releasing heat through surface blood vessels, and sweating. A cold bath or cold wet cloths on the skin can lower a very high fever before it does serious damage to the body.
What are pine cones?
The cones found on pines and other conifer plants are reproductive structures. Small male cones produce millions of grains of pollen that are carried by the wind to sticky female cones, where fertilization takes place and seeds begin to grow. Shortly after they release their pollen, male cones die, their work done. Soft and green at the time of fertilization, female cones gradually become larger, brown, and woody. This change makes room for and protects the growing seeds within its scales, which, unlike those of flowers don't have hard pod coverings of their own. Conifer seeds are described as naked. After a couple of years, when its seeds are mature, a female cone will open and release them into the wind. The female cone may then fall from the plant, its work also done.
Why do people go to jail?
One of the jobs of a government is to maintain order among its citizens. It does this by making rules known as laws. Every country has its own unique set of laws. Though there are striking similarities among the legal systems of many nations. Numerous laws involve the protection of people and their property. In democratic societies like the United States, government representatives are elected by the people to write new laws and vote on their passage. Federal law governs all residents of the country, but state and local governments can make their own laws, as long as they don't conflict with federal laws. People who break laws are punished by the government. Laws would be useless if they were not enforced and lawbreakers went unpunished. Ideally, U.S. laws are applied equally to all citizens, rich or poor, black or white, male or female. Many lawyers, judges, and police officers strive for such equality. Though sometimes people harbor prejudices against certain kinds of people or certain ethnic groups without even knowing it. Flaws do exist in the justice system, sometimes, for example, wealthy people who can afford to hire a team of expensive, savvy lawyers get special treatment in the form of lighter punishment or no punishment at all. But many of the people who have sworn to uphold our nation's laws try to do so with fairness and compassion, regardless of the accused's race, ethnicity, or economic status. In the United States, several laws have been written to protect the rights of someone accused of committing a crime. He or she is considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Someone suspected of a crime is usually arrested and taken into custody by a police officer. Sometimes, in federal cases, for example, the case is presented before a grand jury, a group of citizens who examine the accusations made. The grand jury files an indictment, or a formal charge, if there appears to be enough evidence for a trial. In many criminal cases, however, there is no grand jury. While awaiting trial, the accused may be temporarily released on bail, which is an amount of money meant to guarantee that the person will return for trial instead of leaving the country, or kept in a local jail. Trials are usually held before a judge and a jury of 12 citizens. The government presents its case against the accused person, or defendant, through a district attorney, and another attorney defends the accused. There are strict rules about what can be used as evidence in a trial. Any evidence taken by police as a result of an illegal search of someone's home, for example, cannot be used against the defendant during the trial. If the defendant is judged innocent, he or she is released. If he or she is found guilty of committing a crime, the judge decides the punishment, or sentence, using established guidelines. The lawbreaker may have to pay a fine or go to prison or both.
Why does the skin on my fingers and toes wrinkle when I'm in water for a long time?
The wrinkles that you see on your fingers and toes when you've been in water a long time may make you think that your skin is shriveling and shrinking, just like a raisin. But actually the opposite reaction is taking place. Your skin is expanding. The tough outer layer of skin is thickest on your hands and feet, because those parts get the most wear. This outer layer absorbs water easily once the oily coating on your skin gets washed away in the bath or while swimming. The skin on your fingers and toes soaks up water and expands. Once the water is no longer under your skin, that expanded skin wrinkles up. But those wrinkles don't last long once you get out of the water.
What is smog?
Smog, which originally was named by combining the words smoke and fog, is a type of air pollution. Smog was so named because it can form when moisture in the air combines with smoke particles. The smoke particles come from factories burning coal. This kind of smog has been a problem in London and other cities in Great Britain. Another kind of smog, called photochemical smog, is generally what people mean when they refer to this kind of pollution. Photochemical smog occurs when sunlight combines with the fumes from cars and factories in big cities. This combination produces a chemical reaction, resulting in gases called oxidants. When the weather conditions are right, very little wind or a layer of warm air settling on top of a layer of cool air, smog can accumulate and hover in the air. The Los Angeles, California, area is especially famous for its high levels of smog. The conditions are ripe for a smog problem in Los Angeles. There are a lot of cars producing a great deal of exhaust. The city is located in a valley, where smog tends to accumulate. And it is surrounded by mountains, which means little wind gets in to break up the smog. The oxidants produced in photochemical smog pollute the air, damage plant life, and, in extreme cases, causes people to get sick. It has even been responsible for deaths. Over a 4-day period in 1952, the smog in London became so heavy and thick that people could barely see what was in front of them. By the end of that period, 4,000 people had died from lung ailments produced by the toxic chemicals. In the United States, in the town of Donora, Pennsylvania, 20 people died and thousands more became sick when smog levels reached a dangerous high. Laws attempting to reduce levels of air pollution have made some improvements. But the huge number of cars, factories, and power plants in industrialized nations like the United States continue to produce high levels of air pollution.
What are cold-blooded and warm-blooded animals?
Cold-blooded, or heterothermic. Animals have a body temperature that is regulated by the temperature of their environment. Such animals including fish, amphibians, and reptiles generally cannot survive in climates of extreme temperatures. When it's very cold, or very hot, outside, cold-blooded animals cannot function. Warm-blooded, or homeothermic, animals have the ability to maintain the temperature inside their bodies without being affected by changes in outside temperatures. While extremely cold or extremely hot temperatures can cause even warm-blooded animals like mammals and birds to suffer, their bodies have mechanisms to regulate internal temperature under most conditions. Shivering when you're cold, for example, is your body's way of increasing its temperature. Dogs can release excess heat by panting. And animals that hibernate have ways of slowing down their bodily functions so they can preserve heat.
Did you know that early bicycles had pedals attached to their front wheels, just like tricycles?
To give them greater speed, bike designers kept enlarging the front wheels, some of which measured up to 64 inches, 163 centimeters, across. Known as high-wheelers, they were quite dangerous to ride. Bicyclists couldn't touch the ground with their feet when they stopped, and they often fell forward over their handlebars when they hit bumps. A high-wheeler was also hard to balance because it had only one rear wheel, not two.
If there are so many stars all around us, why can we see them only at night?
When our sun shines on us during the day, the light is so bright that we cannot see any other stars in the sky. The sun is much closer to Earth than are other stars, making it appear even brighter than it is. But at night, when the part of Earth on which we are located is turned away from the sun, we are able to detect all the stars that are close enough to our planet to be seen unless clouds get in the way, of course.
Did you know that a few centuries ago people were so convinced about the health benefits of sneezing That they inhaled something called snuff into their nostrils to make themselves sneeze on purpose?
Snuff, which is flavored and scented ground tobacco, was carried around in fancy little boxes and used throughout the day to cause sneezing. Sniffing snuff reached its greatest popularity during the 18th century. Among wealthy men and women in Europe.
How old is Earth?
Scientists estimate that Earth is between 4.5 and 5 billion years old. They have reached this conclusion by studying moon rocks and meteorites. Rocks that have fallen from space to Earth, that they believe were formed at the same time as our planet.
Why does a beach get bigger and smaller at different times of the day?
Throughout the day and night, the level of water in the world's oceans and other large bodies of water rises and falls. This change is due to tides, which are caused by the gravitational pull of the moon on Earth as our planet rotates on its axis. Water on the part of Earth directly facing the moon bulges as the moon's gravity pulls it, creating high tide, or high water levels. On the opposite side of Earth, a secondary, smaller high tide occurs. Again related to the gravitational pull of the moon. So at any given time during the day or night as the planet rotates, there are two high tides and two low tides, and all the levels in between, in the large bodies of water that cover Earth. High tides occur every 12 hours and 26 minutes. Which is a bit more than half the time it takes Earth to make a complete turn on its axis. That extra 26 minutes comes from the fact that the moon is moving as well. It rotates around Earth once every 30 days or so. While the pull of the moon's gravity is only strong enough to change the levels of the oceans about 2 feet. Tides can make a bigger difference near a coast. At low tide, when water levels are least affected by the gravity of the moon, you may be able to walk far out on a beach. While at high tide, the beach may be almost completely covered by water. The Bay of Fundy, located in Canada, has the biggest difference in water levels between high and low tides, more than 40 feet.
How big were the largest dinosaurs?
Information about dinosaurs changes all the time as new bones are found and new evidence about their surroundings becomes available. Each year, scientists discover around 7 new types of dinosaurs. The dinosaur now considered the largest could be pushed out of first place by another creature soon to be discovered. The largest dinosaurs belong to the group called sauropods. These giant plant eaters include the Apatosaurus, pronounced Apatosaurus, Used to be called Brontosaurus, and Brachiosaurus, pronounced Brachiosaurus, which weighed around 80 tons, that's 160,000 pounds, or 72,640 kilograms, and stood 50 feet, 15 meters, tall. Among the longest of these dinosaurs were the Seismosaurus, pronounced Syzmosaurus, and Supersaurus. The Seismosaurus may have been as long as 150 feet, 45 meters. While the Supersaurus may have stretched to nearly 100 feet, 30 meters. A newly discovered dinosaur, called Paralitodon, is thought to have been close to 100 feet. 30 meters, long, weighing close to 70 tons, 140,000 pounds, or 63,560 kilograms. The upper bone of its forelimb, front leg, is 6 feet, 7 inches long, close to 2 meters. The Argentinosaurus, thought to weigh as much as 100 tons, 200,000 pounds, or 90,800 kilograms, was uncovered in the late 1990s in Argentina, which was home to many of the world's largest dinosaurs. These gentle giants were once thought to live in watery, swampy regions. But recent evidence suggests that most of them were forest dwellers who ate leaves from the tops of trees. They had enormous bodies, very long necks, relatively small heads, and thick, tree trunk-like legs, much like an elephant's legs. They moved very slowly and didn't have many ways to defend themselves. But their tremendous size kept most predators away.
What causes earthquakes?
An earthquake is a great shaking of Earth's surface. It is caused by the cracking and shifting of the plates of rock that make up the planet's layered crust. As shifting plates suddenly slide past one another, vibrations in the form of waves are released. These shock waves travel through Earth, gradually weakening as they move farther from the spot, or spots, where the quake began, which is called the epicenter. Regions located near faults, places where cracks in Earth's crust are known to exist, are particularly vulnerable to earthquakes. Earthquakes vary in size and intensity. They may last a few seconds or continue for a few minutes. They may cause no damage, or they could result in widespread destruction and the deaths of thousands of people. Earthquake vibrations can be so violent that they collapse bridges and buildings, destroy highways, cause landslides, and lead to flooding if they occur in shallow water near a coast. When they occur under the ocean, earthquakes can cause a giant wave called a tsunami, which can reach heights of more than 100 feet.
Why do woodpeckers make such a racket?
Most woodpeckers spend most of their lives in trees. But instead of perching on a branch, woodpeckers spend their days climbing up the tree in a spiral pattern, searching for insects to eat. Some also eat berries and fruit, and others, called the sap suckers, eat tree sap. They find insects by repeatedly and rapidly pecking at tree bark with their sharp bills. An action that produces the telltale hammering noise. Woodpeckers have long, thin tongues that they use to reach into the holes they've created and pull out insects. Woodpeckers also peck at trees to carve out holes they can use for nests. Male woodpeckers make such tapping noises to attract a mate and to tell other males where their territory is, and to keep away from it. Woodpeckers have thick, strong skulls that protect their brains and other organs from the stress of their repeated pecking.
What is the tallest building in the world?
For many years the Sears Tower in Chicago was the tallest building in the world. Following 2 years of construction, the skyscraper was completed in 1973. Its 110 stories reach 1,450 feet. 442 meters, into the sky, and twin antennae towers on top add another 250 or so feet, about 76 meters. With a foundation extending 100 feet into the ground. The great building weighs 222,500 tons, 445 million pounds, or about 200 million kilograms. About 12,000 people work in its many offices. And about 1.5 million people visit its observation skydeck each year, from which they can see 4 states, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin, on a clear day. In 1998, though, a taller structure called the Petronas Towers was completed in Kuala Lumpur, the capital city of Malaysia. While just 88 stories high, 241-foot pinnacles, slender peaks on the building's top bring its height to 1,482 feet, 8 inches, about 452 meters. Not to be outdone, however, builders in Chicago are already at work on plans for another skyscraper that will be taller still.
Why do some people lose the hair on their heads?
Scientists have been trying to figure out why some people, mostly men, begin to lose their hair as they grow older. It is believed that a certain hormones are chemicals that are produced by glands and control different body processes, causes hair follicles to shrink, and they begin to produce shorter, thinner hairs. The tendency to lose hair or be bald runs in families, meaning that it is an inherited trait. In rare cases, diseases can also cause people to lose their hair. Sometimes hair loss happens as a result of chemotherapy treatments for cancer, anti-cancer drugs affect some healthy cells as well, including those that cause hair growth. Hair loss due to chemotherapy is reversible. However, hair will usually begin growing back once the treatments are over.
How does a magnifying glass work?
A magnifying glass is a convex lens, which means that it is much thicker in the middle than around its edges. This shape bends the light waves of objects viewed through it, causing us to see them in unusual ways. When you hold a magnifying glass close to an object, its light waves are widened before they are focused on your eyes, causing the object to appear very large. But when you hold a magnifying glass out and view a distant object with it, the item appears smaller and upside down. This effect is due to the image being beyond the focus of the lens. The more curved a convex lens is, the greater its ability to bend light and magnify. Microscopes, which allow us to look at things that are too small to be seen with our eyes, and binoculars and telescopes, which make far-away things look bigger and nearer to us, also use convex lenses.
What is an iceberg?
An iceberg, a large mass of ice that floats in the sea. Usually comes from a glacier, a large mass of ice located on land, or from an ice sheet that covers a large expanse of water. Icebergs are much larger than they appear. Only about 1/10 of an iceberg shows above the water line. A fact that can cause problems for ships. A ship may steer around the visible part of an iceberg only to collide with the wide base hidden beneath the water's surface. The Titanic, a luxury ocean liner that set sail across the North Atlantic in 1912, is perhaps the most famous ship to crash into an iceberg and sink, resulting in the deaths of more than 1,500 of its passengers. Modern sonar, sound wave, and radar, radio wave equipment used during regular sea and air patrols have greatly reduced the danger of icebergs for ships today. The largest icebergs can be found in the Antarctic Ocean, near the South Pole. Some large icebergs have been known to reach heights of 328 feet, 100 meters above the water's surface, and one of the largest icebergs ever found was thought to be 170 miles. 274 kilometers, long and 25 miles, 40 kilometers, wide. The area of that iceberg nearly equals that of the state of Connecticut.
How many countries are there in the world?
There are about 191 countries in the world today. But because the political world is constantly changing, that number never stays the same for very long. For example, in the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, fighting ethnic groups have declared the regions of Serbia and Montenegro separate countries. But until the United States and other nations accept their independence and national borders, the regions will not officially become countries.
How do scientists measure the strength of an earthquake?
A few different scales measure how strong an earthquake is. The best known is the Richter scale, created in 1935. Which uses an instrument called a seismograph to measure the size of the ground waves created by an earthquake. An earthquake's size, or magnitude, generally ranges from 1 to 8 on the Richter scale. Though the waves of some giant quakes have registered well beyond the top of the scale. The shock waves of an earthquake that registers a magnitude of 1 can only be detected with special instruments, while those with a magnitude of 8 cause massive damage. Every increase of one number means a tenfold increase in the strength of an earthquake. For example, a quake that measures 5 on the scale is 10 times stronger than one that measures 4. Some new methods have been devised to measure earthquakes, including one that measures what is called moment magnitude. This scale examines the size of the fault where the earthquake took place and measures how much Earth's crust has slipped. The Mercalli scale is also used to measure the strength of an earthquake. This scale works by describing the effect an earthquake has on people and structures. It lists 12 levels of intensity an earthquake can reach. At level 1, for example, only a few people may feel a quake. But at level 6, it is felt by all and damage starts to occur to buildings. A level 12 earthquake would bring about large-scale destruction.
Why do I have to go to the dentist?
About every 6 months to a year, you should make a visit to your dentist's office. A dental hygienist there will give your teeth a good cleaning, removing built-up and hardened food and other substances that can't be taken care of through regular brushing and flossing. And that could lead to gum disease if not removed. Then your dentist will view your teeth with a tiny mirror, looking into hidden places, searching for cavities and decay. When cavities and tooth decay are not detected early, they can become serious, causing pain, infection, and even tooth loss. If your teeth have fillings, your dentist will make sure that they are in good shape. X-rays of your teeth and jaws may be taken, too, to show cavities and other dental problems that cannot be seen during a regular examination. In addition, until you are about 13 years old, you will receive a fluoride treatment every year while the hard outer covering of your teeth, enamel, is still forming. Fluoride is a chemical that strengthens that enamel, helping it to resist decay.
What are stalactites and stalagmites?
Caves form in huge, thick deposits of rocks like limestone, which dissolves over time when rainwater passes over or seeps through it. As water drips through the roof of a limestone cave, the drips leave bits of mineral behind. causing a stone column called a stalactite to form, which grows down in a cone shape like an icicle. Where the drips hit the cave floor, leaving behind more minerals. A stone column called a stalagmite forms, growing up. One way to remember which word describes which kind of growth is to think of stalactites as holding tight to the ceiling. The G in stalagmites can stand for the word ground. Stalactites and stalagmites can become very large. And sometimes they meet in the middle, forming a single column or pillar of stone. The largest stalactite in the world is located in a cavern in County Clare, Ireland. It measures more than 23 feet, 7 meters, long. The largest stalagmite known to exist is located near Lozère in southern France. It measures more than 95 feet, 29 meters, in length and is still growing.
What is a booger?
The mucous membrane that lines your nose is moist and sticky. That environment helps trap dust and other things in the air before they can pass into your lungs. When moisture evaporates from the thick film of mucus that covers the lining of your nose, which happens all the time as air passes over it, the mucus, combining with the particles you've breathed in, becomes dried and crusty, forming boogers.
How do cellular phones work?
Cellular phones have exploded in popularity in a relatively short period of time. Cell phones first became available to consumers in the early 1980s. But the technology that made them small and truly portable evolved gradually over the next 10 years or so. By the beginning of the 21st century, millions and millions of people in countries all over the world were using cell phones on a daily basis. And it isn't just adults who enjoy the benefits of completely mobile phone capabilities. In the United States alone, more than 20% of teenagers have a cell phone. That translates to at least 1 in 5 American teens. Before cellular phones, people like police officers or taxi drivers could communicate from their cars using two-way radios. All of the radios in one city transmitted signals via a large central antenna located on top of a tall building, with all callers sharing one antenna. The number of calls that could be made at any one time was very limited. The cellular system takes care of that problem by dividing each city into many small cells. A large city can have hundreds. Each cell has its own tower, which contains an antenna as well as transmitters and receivers that send and receive signals. Each tower can handle numerous callers at a given time, and their small size and weaker signal, compared to the radio antennae, means that their signals don't interfere with those of nearby towers. When you call someone using a cellular phone, your phone is sending and receiving signals via radio waves. Invisible bands of energy that work like light rays. In other words, your cell phone is a fancy, high-tech radio. After you dial a friend's number, your phone must find the closest tower by searching for the strongest signal. Once that signal is located, your phone transmits certain information like your cell phone number and serial number that help your service provider, the company your parents pay each month for cell phone service, make sure you are one of their customers. Then the mobile telephone switching office, MTSO, finds an available channel where your conversation can take place. The MTSO then completes the connection, all of this happening in a few short seconds. And you are chatting with your friend without wires or cords to hold you down. If you are sitting in the back seat of the car while talking, and your mom is driving you from one end of town to the other, your call will be automatically switched from one cell to the next without any pause in your conversation.
What starts a sneeze?
Anything that irritates the lining of your nose can start a sneeze. A cold or infection can irritate the inside of your nose, as can things that are breathed in like dust and pollen. The fine hairs that line your nose are connected to nerve endings. And when they send a message to your brain that something is there that shouldn't be, your brain tells certain muscles to get rid of it. Your throat closes while air pressure builds up in your lungs. When the air is suddenly let go, it blows dust or germs or other things from your nose. During a powerful sneeze, air can exit your lungs at around 100 miles, 161 kilometers, per hour.
Is it okay to tell a secret that someone else told me?
A big part of listening to someone's secret is promising not to tell anyone else. Doing what you promise is a way of showing that you can be trusted. When you tell someone else's secret, it usually indicates that you care more about yourself than about the person who shared the confidence with you. That behavior breaks the basic rule of conduct that helps people get along in the world. Treating others the same way in which you would like to be treated.
How much food does an elephant eat each day?
As the largest land animal, the elephant needs a lot of food to keep it going. An elephant eats all day long, browsing or grazing on vegetation like grasses, leaves, and fruit. It can consume hundreds of pounds of food each day, when available, and drink up to 50 gallons, 190 liters, of water. Elephants usually live in large herds, making it necessary to continuously travel over a large region. They are such big animals and big eaters. If they didn't keep moving, they could easily strip an area of vegetation.
How is it decided where a country will be?
Sometimes the size and shape of countries are dictated by the geography of the land around them. Mountain ranges, large bodies of water, deserts, and other features often provide natural boundaries that separate one country from another. The location of borders are often agreed upon by the countries that share them and recognized by other nations in the world. Border and territory disputes can be the source of conflict and even war between countries.
Who invented the sandwich?
A sandwich is a piece of meat or other food that is placed between two pieces of bread. It is named after John Montagu, the 4th Earl of Sandwich, a place in England, who invented this way of eating in the 18th century. Hooked on gambling, he couldn't take the time to stop playing and eat a regular meal. He asked to have his meat brought to him between two slices of bread so the cards wouldn't get greasy. And he ate this meal, dubbed a sandwich, right at the gaming tables.
Why are some mountain tops covered with snow even throughout summer?
The higher you travel up a mountain, the colder the temperature becomes and the thinner the air becomes as well. Which means there are smaller quantities of the gases, like oxygen, that make up air. Some mountains are so high that the air at the top is always cold, never warming enough for snow to melt, not even in the summertime. No creatures can live in the highest regions of tall mountains, withstanding the cold, wind, and thin air, beyond a certain height, 13,000 feet. Or 3,965 meters, in warm regions, even trees cannot grow on mountainsides. To stay alive when climbing the highest peaks, mountain climbers must take along tanks of oxygen to breathe.
If a plant isn't green, can it still perform photosynthesis?
Many plants contain other pigments in addition to the green pigment chlorophyll, which traps light energy for photosynthesis. These other pigments can mask chlorophyll's green color. So the leaves and stems of such plants may appear red, purple, or even brown. But these plants still contain chlorophyll and can still use photosynthesis to produce food.
Why can't babies do anything?
Try to imagine what it is like to be born. 1 minute you are floating in a warm, dark, quiet world where there is nothing to see, not much to feel, and where you don't even have to eat or breathe on your own, it's all done for you. with nutrition and oxygen reaching you through a special tube called an umbilical cord that connects you to your mother. Then all at once you arrive in an unknown world, as strange as any planet in outer space. Suddenly, air touches your skin and feels warm or cold. Loud sounds, and light, and strange-looking creatures and objects surround you. You have to breathe at once in order to survive. You experience hunger for the first time and will soon have to learn how to eat, too. It takes a long time for a newborn to learn about his or her new world. Human babies are born with instincts and reflexes that help them survive, just like other baby animals. But they have no knowledge or experience about the complex world of people into which they arrive. So don't be impatient with babies, they have everything to learn. Making the learning process twice as hard is the fact that human babies are not fully developed when they are born. In nature, less complex life forms like insects, for instance, can move about and get their own food as soon as they are hatched. But the young of higher forms of life and humans are at the top take many years before they are physically mature. People grow until they are between the ages of 18 and 20 years old, with body changes occurring very quickly in the early years. And because the human brain is so complex, mental growth continues throughout a lifetime. During much of their lives, then, children must be fed, cared for, and taught by adults. So when newborns start out, their bodies aren't even ready for the demands of their new world. They can't see very well at first, especially things that are far away. They don't know how to use their arms and legs much. For a while they can't even grasp things with their hands. The digestive systems of newborns are immature, too, and babies don't have teeth. Unable to eat solid foods, they depend on breast milk or baby formula for all their nutrition. And sometimes they can't even keep that in their stomachs, spitting up a lot. Most frustrating of all for everyone, including the baby, is the fact that babies are unable to talk at first. And the only way they can communicate their feelings or needs is to cry.